Hey y'all, I'm Juliana Lucchesi. I'm a people business partner here at GitLab working with product and engineering orgs. I'm recording this video to take y'all through some training material the PVP's put together on iterations to performance and growth, the two fields that feed into our talent assessment. We have a training session with people managers next week, and we're asking that y'all review the slides ahead of time, as the session will be primarily for Q&A and to leverage that time to do some breakout room sessions to look through some scenarios. So I'm going to walk you through the slides and the material that we have, hopefully add a little bit more context and color as you review. So let's kick off. Great. So again, the purpose of this is to review the performance and growth assessment training slides and to cover some iterations and some changes that have happened since the last fiscal year. And we'll be kicking off with what is changing, moving into the performance growth matrix itself, that structure, talking about the difference between performance and growth, delving a bit deeper into each, the total rewards impact, and next steps and timeline. So what is changing? We've broken this up into what the process was in fiscal year 21 and what it will be in FY'22. So in terms of the tool, the performance potential matrix has become the performance growth matrix, which leads me into the next one, the axes. Performance is remaining the same, but potential has been changed to growth. In terms of assessing performance, it is required as it was last year, and assessing growth is also required this year. That's a change from fiscal year 21 where it was not required to assess potential. For annual compensation review impact, both performance and growth will feed into this, as we're requiring it be assessed company-wide, whereas last year we only required performance. And communication to team member, we're also asking that managers communicate both performance and growth once these assessments are finalized, as opposed to just performance. And why are we doing all this? So we received feedback from the business after our assessment period last fiscal year that we should consider iterating on potential. A few specific pieces of feedback were that potential felt very final, like something that couldn't be changed, and that communicating someone has low potential felt like a very demotivating experience. So we did some research, got feedback from the business, discussed as a PVP team, and we landed on growth as something that felt more aligned to what we were trying to assess. So the matrix itself, what is it? So the matrix, also known as 9-box in some places and organizations, is an individual assessment tool that evaluates both team members' current contribution and potential contribution in the future. It's primarily a tool to help managers assess, develop, and coach their team members, which hopefully ultimately results in an ability to more effectively and efficiently lead teams. There are a lot of benefits, but a few of the key benefits are helping to facilitate career development conversations, ensuring transparency in this communication process between managers and team members, and that it is a two-way street. Talk about promotion readiness, planning promos, succession planning, and just increasing general awareness of top talent across departments and divisions at GitLab. And this is the matrix itself, what it looks like. You'll notice it's the same essentially as it was last year, with the exception of moving potential to growth. We've also changed the scale that we're using to evaluate growth. It was previously low, medium, high, and now it's developing, growing, exceeding. So the scales for performance and growth are now very similar. The only difference is for performing, it's performance for that middle layer, and for growth, it's growing for that middle layer. And this is the tool itself. We have an in-house tool that we'll use in Q4 to assess this, built by our full stack engineer, Lean. Thank you. Again, here you'll just notice that the change is potential to growth, and we've updated the scale here as well. And performance. So how we measure performance in our scale has remained largely the same for performance. We didn't change much here. So just to recap, when we think about performance, it's job, family, and functional competencies weighted at 60%, GitLab competencies weighted at 40%. We have a performance factor worksheet to help y'all assess this for your teams, completely optional. If you find it helpful, you can use it. If you don't, that's fine too. And expected distribution is that bell curve that we typically see with performance, developing 10 to 15% of the population, performing that core group 60 to 65 and exceeding 25%. And here for the performance output, we just have some examples and kind of insights that would lead y'all as managers to kind of determine whether someone is developing, performing, or exceeding. Growth. So in addition to changing from potential to growth, we've incorporated these 4 pillars that kind of break down what growth is. And hopefully this helps managers assess and team members understand what this means. So the 4 pillars are adaptability, expandability, consistency, and self-awareness. We have definitions to kind of further explain what each of these things mean, in addition to some examples in the handbook. And all handbook links are in the slides in the notes section. So if you want to read up a bit more on any of these things ahead of the training, feel free to reference the handbook too. Growth output, again, very similar to performance with the exception of growing instead of performing. One thing I did want to call out here is under developing. Please note that developing growth does not equate to developing performance, but rather correlates to the pillars outlined here. So if someone's developing in their performance, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're developing growth and vice versa. We are assessing these as 2 separate things. Total rewards impact. So the impact of performance and growth, both performance and growth will have an impact on compensation during the upcoming compensation review. So we assess this in Q4 and it's effective February 1, 2022. So this ties into the performance factor that we used last year. Developing is 0 to 3, performing is 3 to 7, exceeding is 6 to 10. So we'll continue to assess performance aligned with the formula we used last year, but growth this year will also be an impact. So compensation you see may increase up or down from the percentages outlined above, and growth will be something, the growth factor will be something that is an additional input here, in addition to things listed like budget constraints, previous increases, etc. So we'll also consider growth. Total rewards impact for key talent. So key talent is another thing we think about and that you'll review as managers when it comes time for the formal performance and growth assessment. Key talent makes up roughly 10% of the population at GitLab, and team members are considered key talent if they meet at least one of the following criteria. So if the team member were to leave, there would be critical disruption to the product, critical disruption to ARR, a substantial impact to the company achieving significant milestones, or a substantial impact to a significant process. And how does being identified as key talent impact compensation? So GitLab total rewards, again, is equity, cash, and benefits. And we have a market-based approach to differentiate pay based on performance, with growth being an input there, in addition to key talent. So being identified as key talent will also be a factor considered in compensation. Next steps. So the session, again, training with managers, is next week, August 2nd. And we're going to ask that y'all have an informal performance growth conversation with your teams. We want to make sure that performance and growth isn't only discussed in annual compensation review, but that it's rather an ongoing discussion that occurs at least twice a year, ideally. The goal here is to just become more comfortable talking about this, so it's not something new for you as a manager or something new for your team members come annual compensation. The conversation we're asking you to have in August, September, Q3 will not impact compensation. Again, the sole purpose is to just get more comfortable, get some data points and feedback from your team as well, but it will not impact comp. We'll reassess this more formally in Q4 as part of annual comp review. So for this informal in-session, we're not going to use the assessment tool. We're not going to do calibration sessions. We're just asking that y'all document these conversations in your one-on-one docs or use the template that we have linked here. We also have 360s in the works coming up in the month of August. So it's up to you as managers whether you want to incorporate this as part of your 360 conversation when reports come out, whether you want to manage them as 2 separate conversations. Our only ask is that they're completed by September 20th. And in November, again, we'll do more formal assessment of performance and growth. This is completed by managers in partnership with leadership. We'll calibrate, do all of that. And in December, managers will communicate the results, performance, and growth once they're finalized and approved through eGroup. And in February, increases will be effective. So coming up again next week, we have a couple training sessions, one for APAC and Americas, another for EMEA and Americas. It'll be a Q&A with people, business partners, and Total Rewards, and we'll participate in breakout sessions. So managers have an opportunity to discuss different scenarios with their peers. We'll come back as a group for any outstanding questions and close out. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video, and we'll see y'all soon.